Am I doing all right? Okay. So my name is Beth Minot, Director of IPaT, Institute for People and Technology, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Spring Town Hall. Spring because it is the semester, and also because of this crazy, beautiful weather that we're having. Usually when we schedule this, we actually create an ice storm, so I'm very pleased that we have not managed to create. We did that last year. So today we have a terrific set of folks to speak with you. And again, remind everyone, even though it says that we end at 5, that just means the content ends at 5, and then the networking starts. So we'll have a reception afterwards, and everyone is please invited and encouraged to attend. So I'm up here to warm up the audience, so I'm the warm-up act, but I want to give you a sense for what we're doing this semester, give you a quick reminder of IPaT's research portfolio and our pillars. And mostly what I'm doing is calling attention to things that will be in those email messages that you might be tempted to not fully read. So now you're going to know, okay, well, this is coming. Your cheat sheet is IPaT@gatech.edu. This reaches me, but it also reaches other staff members. Think of this as the IPaT help desk. So as you see something coming by and you want to make sure you get connected to it, just drop us an email at IPaT@gatech.edu, and we'll make sure you get invited to the workshop or the activity or get on our mailing list or however, and you need to be connected. Of course, everything is on our website, but we want to make sure that you find out about recent activities. We're going to jumpstart some interesting discussions on supporting climate resiliency coming from a people and technology perspective. Many of you are probably familiar with the great work that's being done across the campus around climate change, around sustainability, and what we want to bring to this is an introduction to some of the partnerships and activities that have been happening that really focus on human behavior, so the people and technology side of this. And in particular, it can be anything from how do you change individual behavior? I'm still trying to get my kids to turn off the lights when they leave the room. I don't understand why that is so difficult. But then also, how do we engage communities as a whole? And if nothing, we know that you're here to talk with your colleagues to discuss new ideas and meet people that even after decades on the Georgia Tech campus, you'll meet someone new, I promise it. So IPaT in one slide. We are shaping the future of human-centered systems, environments, and technologies to promote satisfying, healthy, and productive lives. This is our mission, and we will come back to this in many ways throughout this afternoon. How do we catalyze these interdisciplinary research conversations, collaborations between our faculty and our students and our industry partners? Then once we've catalyzed and we've gotten everybody going, how do we provide that continuity and capacity to address societal changes? So one of the things that we love about the water that they were carrying and the things that we're doing here at IPaT is we're bringing together faculty who wouldn't have worked together before. We're energizing and educating our students. We're working with partners, and we're addressing crazy, wicked problems that people couldn't do by themselves in their own labs, working on their own agendas. Once we've done that great work, then how do we advocate for the socio-technical change that needs to happen? So I'm always thrilled when we have our folks here from public policy, our work we do with the FDA, the FCC, in DC as a whole, anything that we can do to say, okay, technology is an angle, design is an angle, here's what we need to have happen, and then how do we close the loop around policy and around economic development. And then finally, we're always educating, right? So we don't, I teach class Monday, Wednesdays, 3 to 4:15 over in aerospace. But what we really do is that we're always working with our students, with our partners, through professional education, through our community workshops, through the things that we're doing today, because we want to bring the rest of the world with us in that way and teach them from a human-centered perspective. Engineering, scientists, designers, business, and policymakers again. And we're going to do this work across these transdisciplinary pillars, and I want to talk to you about some of the exciting things that are happening and going on this semester. So in our lifelong health and well-being, Leanne West is here. So we're really excited about the new partnership with the Shriners, so that's fantastic, and around a new research program around orthopedic care. So Leanne, wave. If you send an email to IPaT, we'll just forward it to her. But you can find out about that new partnership. So how do we bring in kind of the new partners to make the change happen in the world? Also, we're very excited with our new partnership with Emory. So this is a joint program working with families with adults who have been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, but working with them, the therapeutic team, and their care partners. We opened the doors on this brand new facility earlier this week. I met our first 10 patient members of this program and already had a session with them working on functional independence. They are using the Georgia Tech Design app on their tablets that helps educate them and provide resources to them. And we're already starting to deploy technology in their homes to support functional independence in their daily life activities. This is a crazy exciting roller coaster, but it's brought in our architectural strength with the Centigrade Lab, our Aware Home Lab, the partnership with GTRI and CACP around Home Lab. And what I just thoroughly love about this program is that we built into it this notion of an innovation accelerator. So we already have our first round of seed grants for other researchers working in this space. And maybe you're not completely surprised that all of them have a really strong Georgia Tech presence in that work. More work on critical research infrastructure. So I mentioned Home Lab. This is our testbed of homes in the greater Atlanta area. Brad Fain, who's not here yet today, but Brad is the leader of that. We have hundreds to 600 to 800 homes of adults where we know their demographic information and information about chronic health conditions, but we are now have launched our pediatric home lab of families focused on the needs of their children. 60 homes is the target, 60 homes. So again, anyone working in these spaces can contact Brad and say, I need to do a deployment with families with these types of criteria. We can work through that infrastructure and be able to assess and evaluate and design in these authentic settings. And then you're going to hear later John Duke, who I know is here. There's John, front row, who's going to talk about really rejuvenating our partnership with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and new contracting mechanisms that allow us to do more and more work with them. So that's coming up. All right, Sean promised to give me the signal, but I'll keep talking. So our second pillar around smart cities and inclusive innovation. I know I saw Deborah already this afternoon, the work that we're doing around Georgia Smart Communities. So we're now into our second class of communities that we're working with. Columbus, Macon Bibb, Milton, Woodstock. And then we're already encouraging and soliciting applications for our third cohort. So if you're interested in that, please look for information on that website for the workshop on March 26th. Also new partnerships with MARTA. So that was announced just a few months ago. So again, a new collaborative research agreement, creating new research opportunities as well as access to interesting data to fuel our research agendas. Also a workshop from the fall around digital twin technology. So this is coming out of substantial leadership where Georgia Tech is now really setting the conversation for what it means to work with digital twins, how to have the virtual simulation connected to the physical reality and learn to work in terms of sensing and modeling and simulation and then driving community conversations and policy. And then for those who remember, I think our first fall think tank was with Yanni Lukakis on his map room. And I won't say it was because of our think tank that did it, but I've just been so excited to see Yanni's research group connected to more and more projects and is now deeply connected to the work that we're doing, for example, in Savannah. And just it's a one-of-a-kind invention that has come out of our community, and to see it connecting more and more to the work that we're doing. So just fantastic growth really within this research pillar. More and more growth, not surprisingly, within the Shaping the Human Technology Frontier. So this image is 24 hours old, Clint. So this is our new, I love getting the stuff hot off the presses, literally. So this is our new embroidered garment sleeves that are creating new touch interfaces and use both combinations of haptic and passive design elements. If you would like to know what that means, just go find Clint. Clint, wave. And this is some of the work that's being done in our wireless RERC center. So as you know, funded by NIDLR, these are one-of-a-kind national leadership around technology oriented towards people with disabilities. So I know part of what they're doing with the touch interfaces is new interaction mechanisms for people with visual impairments. I kind of skipped ahead, but Clint is also the leader of bringing the Wearable Fashion and Technology panel, and that's coming in May. And so that is, again, a terrific collaboration, and allows us to continue to push literally the boundaries of the human technology frontier, and doing it in some really particularly gorgeous and impressive ways. Also pushing those boundaries, and you're going to hear about it more during our Madness session, is the future of sports. So Shiva's going to talk to you about that, but one of the things that I wanted to highlight was how many students are in the VIP section now?
76. Wow.
76 students. So this was, it didn't exist just...
No, oh, that was all the classes.
Oh, okay.
It's across all the classes.
Across all of the classes, yeah. So there's some that are in esports and some that are in traditional sports, but just seeing kind of all of the students kind of gravitating to this question, and then it's also showing up in our Convergence Innovation Competition. And then it's been fantastic in our weekly think tank series to see a number of these conversations coming to the larger community. So in the fall, we had the discussions around hashtags to movements, around questions of performance, narrative, and erasure within the Black feminist community. We just had last week, if my brain is trying to remember all of these details, our sports and esports think tank. Crafts as a research medium is coming next week. And then this is an engagement grant that we've been funding with the GVU Center, but we'll be coming and talking about growing the research community around language technology. So again, this is why we have this on Thursday afternoons. Now you know how to find the place. Same time, same channel, every week will be our think tanks, and these are some of the topics that are coming your way. And then finally, in the platforms and services for socio-technical systems, I'm just highlighting the tremendous growth around this particular project. So again, a pilot program that came out of Georgia Smart, our partnership within Savannah with Chatham County. This is the grant work that has been done just in the past year. So things that are already funded are now under review. I know I'm not supposed to brag about this one the most because it's still under review, but just tremendous growth in the collaboration of bringing new people in across campus and bringing in a multidisciplinary perspective to building and supporting a resilient community facing the challenges around sea level rise. Just as exciting as all of the grant work is all of the work that's being done around community outreach and engagement. In a beautiful Georgia Tech way, we deployed 40 some odd sensors on our own, and then we taught middle school kids how to build them, and they're already working. They've already assembled the first 30 and starting to work on the next batch because the supplies just got delivered last week to them. So fantastic. So STEM education, and we're getting more and more sensors out into this network. Completely different model for how you bring in this information to understand the changes of climate change. This is our partnership with Seismic in doing this, and then also kind of continuing to work within the communities. And Russ Clark, Kim Cobb, and others will tell you, we understand that the technology and the engineering, the analytics are challenging and difficult, but just as challenging and requires real devotion and dedication is that community partnership. It's being down in the community, building that trust, building that engagement, because it's not just about what the technical features may inform you about, but then how does the community respond? Well, that requires building consensus. It requires building trust. So that is part of kind of the people and technology equation within this pillar. So we do all of this work with a deep collaboration between the academic resident instruction, the RI side of campus, and with the applied side with GTRI. So this is just showcasing some of those projects, everything from STEM education to our work. This was around the Zika virus, as well as some of our work with DFACS and cancer care. So deep collaborations and growing every day, and Lee McCook, our deputy director, continues to work with us to make sure we keep building new collaborations. So as I move into the how and what we're doing, I always want to remind everyone of the core values that came about our strategic planning process. So one, Georgia Tech, we will operate with collaboration and transparency, and creating trusted partnerships, not just with the people that we work with on quote unquote the outside of Georgia Tech, but how we work within Georgia Tech as well. We embrace innovation, creativity, as well as understanding that Not all ideas are going to work out, but we're going to, applaud and be excited about those efforts because they're pushing really, really interesting boundaries. And we recognize, respect, and embrace inclusion and diversity in all the work that we do, not just in the workplace that we create for ourselves, but also paying attention to who are the recipients and the benefactors of the research that we engage in. So with that, we've now translated that mission, and so you'll have access to these slides on the website, but this gives you a sense for, on an annual basis, we're getting together and you're going to hear about our annual industry innovation event, all the way to what we do on a daily basis. I'm now realizing the one slide I left out, but somewhere in here, yes, the annual IPaT office hours. This means I don't have a silly slide with a block of cheese on it. We do this every year. This also is a good way that we cause ice storms. But we do this every year, and we create a time where the IPaT staff gathers together. We will announce tomorrow morning a set of time slots. Anyone on campus gets to book 30 minutes within the office hours and come talk to us about the research you're doing, the research that you want to do, the engagement that you're looking for. It's a first come, first serve opportunity, and we use this as a way not only to keep touch base with our frequent flyers, as we call them, but we always meet new people and hear new great ideas. So this is an open call to the community, and as I said, that will be announced officially on the VR channels with the Google spreadsheet. And I'm trying to remember, about every other year we manage to get a snow day out of it. So you can also thank us for that when that happens. All right, so again, translating our mission to action, you're going to hear about a convergence innovation competition. I've talked to you about our think tanks. This is what we do day in and day out in this facility. So if this is your first time visiting IPaT, this gives you a sense as to what we do. And on the previous slide, I told you why we do it. So priorities for research infrastructure. So Matt's here. So in charge of all of these aspects of bringing the continuity and capacity to our campus. So in particular, we've really been looking at the data support, all the way from our one-of-a-kind Medicaid data sets to new data sets within smart cities, and then looking to the enhancements that we're doing to our key laboratories, such as the Aware Home, Home Lab, and Centigrade. And I mentioned to you the now extension of Home Lab into pediatrics. I mentioned IPaT think tanks. Again, same time, same place, same channel. You can come every week. And I think what's important about it is there are terrific seminars on this campus every single day. A think tank is a chance to pitch, to collaborate, to build new ideas. So these folks will not come and drone on like I'm doing right now, but what they will come is they'll come and talk for about 5 or 10 minutes of what's going on. We sit in a big circle, and then we continue to brainstorm, and people are either swapping real business cards or virtual business cards to talk about new things that they can do going forward. So we are looking for more think tank ideas. We always do late binding on think tanks because we want them to be timely. So Faith, where's Faith? Faith. Looking for there's Faith. So again, email ipat@gettech.edu. That will go to Faith, who takes care of our think tank schedule and makes sure that you know about these great ideas. Our Convergence Innovation Competition, 12 years running, over 250 students per year. They will be filling this suite on April 1st, and they will be bringing to here projects that they have been working on. Our categories for this year are, not surprisingly, interesting solutions around climate, health on the move, which allows us to do agile health and mobile health and all sorts of fun health things, and then create and perform, which is a combination of our work that we're doing in sports as well as our work that we're doing with arts at tech and other forms of artistic expression. So if you're a student or encouraging students, please get them to participate. We are always looking for folks who are going to come in and help judge and really just come in and soak up the brilliance and the excitement of their ideas. This year we're partnering with the Global Change Program, CreateX, and the Georgia Tech Athletic Association as sponsors in this. They get prizes, but what they really get is exposure and guidance. And we've had some fantastic teams create successful startup companies. They always have way more job offers than they know what to do with, but it's just a fantastic experience for the students. They're getting smart. They come in younger every year, and then they come back year after year because they understand how to do this and do this well. So contact Shiva. If you're interested in this, we need to be distributing out how to advertise this out to all of our classes. Space. Everyone's like, I said, I'm going to a space meeting, and they're like, are you meeting with NASA? And I'm like, no. I'm meeting with the great people in capital and space planning. Howard, don't laugh. IPaT, so first off, did we all move to Coda? No, because you also see us right here. But we now have 3 major sites of our activities, so we're trying to be better about saying we're at IPaT at Synergy, which is this location, so really around our collaboration and where the majority of our staff are. At IPaT at Coda, we're on the 14th floor, I'm going to get that right, and that is primarily our researchers and our support around health data and health data infrastructure. But we also have a cool ideation lab that we need to put to more use, so talk to our everybody wave who has an office in Coda. Okay, they're all sitting over there. I don't know why. Okay, so they can tell you more about the capabilities, but you'll see more and more, including think tanks and other things, as we bring activities to this new and exciting space. And then IPaT at TSRB is especially our partnership with the GVU Center. So Keith Edwards, director of GVU there. That's our student app lab, our RNOC lending library, which is all the cool mobile tech that we provide to student project groups, as well as our work in interactive media and our installation and laboratories there. So when you hear about something's happening at IPaT, just do a double check to make sure you know which space you're going to. Our spring schedule, so you were here. IPaT Spring Town Hall, I've mentioned our think tanks. Research directors or the leadership of different centers across campus, we get together monthly. It's an exciting opportunity to grow new ideas. So we get together and they get breakfast, which gets them there at that hour. Our Convergence Innovation Competition, Shiva's going to tell you about our major event with our sports symposium and our inaugural Esports Invitational. Really cool banner. And then Keith, again, the GVU showcase, because of the timing, we're timing this with the NCAA. So we've broken out those things. They're usually at the same time. But the GVU Research Showcase will be on April 15th, and you'll be hearing about that as well. All right. Everything I've talked about is due to our great faculty and students, and it's really due to the amazing staff that we have here. So go find one of these people, thank them, and then ask them about other things that they can learn about IPaT and how they can, again, continue to reach for our vision and just really just change the world in terms of Georgia Tech's leadership. I ended on time. I think that is a record. Everyone's like, she can do it. All right, so what we're doing now is you're going to hear, the presentations are longer than a minute, but within 10 minutes you're going to hear about 3 major really new efforts going on. John, you're first, Shiva, you're next, and then I will close and then move us into our panel. So Minute Madness just means John's going to be mad. Okay, go for it.
Thank you. All
Thanks.
Right. Yeah, I didn't get the 2-minute memo, but I think I can do it.
You got it.
Thank you. Awesome. You talk as fast as she did.
He can do that.
Believe me, it's. I'm going to talk just a little about one focused area, which is a collaboration between CDC and Georgia Tech. As Beth mentioned, CDC and Georgia Tech have worked together for a very long time on all kinds of things. This is a particular sort of flavor of recent activity that I wanted to share. And this is the coronavirus should probably be on here. I guess it is kind of up there. New. This was for vaping, which is now known as EVALI, e-cigarette and vaping associated lung injury, but also would apply to that. So, obviously public health, there's a lot of concern about new threats that arise, and there's a desire amongst the public health enterprise at large and CDC in particular to develop more of a predictive and less purely reactive approach. And so, as you can imagine, there's a lot of focus around how data can be used more effectively. And so this is kind of one of the many classic pyramids that you will see around predictive analytics and how you build from sort of data to corralling the data to connecting the data to developing insights and ultimately disseminating that. And that's something that we, of course, do across health, but we do across whether it's IPaT or any domain that's applying health analytics or analytics and machine learning. The current collaboration with CDC and Georgia Tech that I'm speaking about involves 5 projects that kicked off in October of this year. The first project is around emergency response. It's being led by the Center for Preparedness Response, the Emergency Operations Center, and it's really about how they can perform and scale up both data aggregation and analysis more quickly and efficiently for outbreaks such as the coronavirus outbreak that they're dealing with right now. And so we're working very closely, meeting across CDC with folks to sort of understand both the context and think about the current investments that they've made and how to augment that. This is a very cool project involving mother-child and sickle cell, so looking at basically children who are born with either metabolic syndrome, sickle cell disease, other conditions identified at birth, and how we can track them longitudinally over time in order to improve surveillance and use the kind of interoperability developments that have occurred in recent years to make that more effective and really feasible. This project is around advancing tools and methods for analytics in general. A big piece is around creating synthetic data sets that reflect realistic health data, which is a big problem in general, is how you can disseminate and share health data. Obviously, we've got Matt looking out and Richard so that the data are protected in a high-trust environment, but you also want to be able to share realistic data sets for people to develop machine learning or other methods, and that's what this project is about in the context of public health. This piece is around death and how to better provide reporting between medical examiners, coroners, toxicology labs, state health departments, and ultimately CDC around vital statistics with death. And then finally, we have a project around really the culture of data, and is it a data-informed culture, how to understand what people are trying to achieve and what people are concerned about regarding the sort of infiltration of quote-unquote big data into CDC and public health. It obviously provides opportunities, but also sort of threats to the way that people currently practice. So these 5 projects are all under a framework, a contract framework called the UARC, which I had never heard of frameworks when I got here 3 years ago and was carefree and happy, and now I know all about them. But that's what happened. Yeah, I have a full head here, but the UARC. So, but it's actually a very nice mechanism for moving funding efficiently between organizations. And so Georgia Tech is fortunate that GTRI is able to kind of plug in to some of these pieces. We were very careful when this contract was designed to ensure that both GTRI and Georgia Tech, or RI, Resident Instruction, could take part in activities under this larger umbrella. And so there's various constraints that have to be addressed. We're working through real-world cases of that now. So there's great opportunities. If you do have a potential CDC collaborator that you'd like to work with or get connected, let us know, and we would love to be able to make it happen under the efficiencies of this project. So that is about that new collaboration, and hopefully 3 minutes is close. All right.
You get one question during the chat.
Oh. Even better. Okay.
So I'll try to be quick as well because I want to announce 3 different things. So who here remembers Sprint, which we announced late last year? Now we are fully a go, and Doug Alvin made it, so thanks. And I saw Billy here too. What started as a small little huddle every Monday morning, Monday afternoon is now a full-fledged program. We have members from across all campus. What we've tried to build is a common place for sports research and innovation to happen, and we are working in cohort with GTAA, the Office of Industry Collaboration, and many other folks on campus. Our goal, and you see we have a pretty reasonable ecosystem of partners already. We're hoping to engage faculty, students, and provide leadership, one of which will be hosting the Premier Sports Conference here in Atlanta, moving it from New York. As part of that, at IPaT, we launched late last year the Gaming and Esports Applied Research Initiative under the directorship of Laura Levy, if you want to say hi, Laura. It's focused purely on gaming and esports and all the activities that is happening here, not just within IPaT, but also hopes to bring in from all across campus, across 3 different pillars: user support, STEM engagement, and then player health and support. If you have any questions and you want to participate or want to link us to people, please contact Laura or myself, and we'll get you through it. And then our signature event that we're hosting on April 3rd is the Inaugural Sports Symposium and Esports Invitational, which is the first college-led esports invitational in the Southeast. And thanks to Raul for the cool logo. We're going to be in Coda on the 9th floor on April 3rd. We hope to have 4 universities participate in the afternoon. We'll have a sports symposium with a couple of exciting prospective keynote speakers on the menu so far, and we hope to publish an agenda. If you have any interest in participating, or more importantly, helping us with sponsorship, please get in touch with me. Yeah, question.
Esports Invitational, can you explain where it's not a sporting event, but a learning event for
Yes, thank you, Doug. That's what do you call that when you set up somebody in the audience? A plant, I like it. So thank you, Doug. So the Invitational is built mainly for exposure to the Georgia Tech community and all our partners to truly experience what an esports competition looks like, right? And that's one of our main objectives, is to educate and also get people involved to truly understand what goes on in one of these things. Any questions?
You keep the mic. Give me the clicker. Perfect. All right. And the last one, so apologies, it's me again, but I want to talk to you about a major proposal that we submitted Monday. It's been a long week. So we were invited, based on a preliminary proposal, to submit for a Science and Technology Center in Human-Centered AI. So what is human-centered AI and how we are tackling this? So we're looking at the interaction of people with intelligent systems from an individual, group, and distributed scale. We're looking in 2 primary domains. Aren't you surprised to see health and well-being and civic engagement as the 2 major areas that we're working in? And then at this point you have to start reading the proposal, but we're looking at a set of grand challenge themes. So how do we align humans and machines working together in concert? And in particular, how do we align different types of knowledge systems? How do we enable new forms of human control and interaction with these systems? How do we recognize that these intelligent systems need to evolve over time? Data changes, people's attitudes change. It's not a one and done, pull in a bunch of data, learn something and deploy, but we actually need to understand how these evolve as part of societal systems. And then finally, how do we bring diversity into this? How do we account for diverse stakeholders? How do we engage these stakeholders in the design process, even if they're not the anticipated end users? And how do we recognize and work with bias? Not just bias that's in the data, but bias that comes from human beings themselves, and how do they work together? So these are the challenge problems that we're working at. And then what we have done is create a really exciting team pulling from Georgia Tech, Columbia as the lead, University of California, San Diego, Morehouse, MIT, Harvard, NYU, to be able to bring in expertise in design methods, machine learning and inference, interaction, HCI design support, and then ethics and policy within socio-technical systems. So why am I telling you about all this? Well, first, we're just all going to collectively cross our fingers and hope that we get a green light for a site visit. But more importantly, we'll be holding a workshop late spring, summer. So this is one of those, be on the lookout for it, because whether we get funded this go around or not, we want to keep growing this research community and keep building this work. So the first workshop was at Columbia in November. This workshop will be at Georgia Tech. So it will be an invitation to our community to come in. Crazy diagram of all of the pieces and partners that we're bringing into this, but recognizing folks like Ellen Zagur leading our education, Carl DeSalvo and Chris Ledontic, here's our research theme leaders. I'm also just kind of proud that if you also look like Lena Mamikina, she's at Columbia, she's a Georgia Tech graduate. Stephen Dow, UC San Diego, he's a Georgia Tech graduate. There's Georgia Tech all over this. Recognizing Carl Rust, who's just amazing in the work that we've been doing around our industry engagement and knowledge transfer, as well as Lizanne DeStefano, who just provided amazing advice and leads our evaluation. So officially, it's being submitted by Columbia, but Georgia Tech has a tremendous share of the budget and tremendous share of the leadership. And I especially love how we're bringing in industry as well as community partners our broadening participation partners, and then our education partners. So lots of great folks. We're going to be planning for this symposium in late spring, early summer. And if successful, we'll hear about it in June. So you'll hear a big hurrah. And then we'll start working really hard for the site visits this fall. Any questions? Terrific. All right. And that has been where I've been all January. So those emails I haven't answered, that's my excuse. All right, we are going to have a rapid set change. Is Kim here? Yay! All right, I am passing the wand of power to Kim Cobb, who is going to be bringing and leading us this tremendous panel of experts around supporting climate resiliency, a people and technology approach. All right. See, I give the word and chairs just appear. Isn't this amazing? All right, and we're doing this crazy thing where people aren't going to sit right in front of the, so 2 on one, 3 on the other?
Pull the front row back a little bit.
It's you, ma'am. And are you on? Yep, you're on.
It's a doomsday proposition, right? Hi. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. We met, yeah. Yeah, Jessica Rose. Good. I know. I'm gonna get in touch with you as well. The mic to pass, I think. Very good, Joe. Hi, Jennifer. Hey, Rich. It's fun. You guys.
You roll.
I guess I think I do. This is short, but I'll make it work.
Yeah, I just hold it.
Make it work. I'm glad you allowed me to arrive 2 to 1. Looks like I was.
All right, I'm going to give you this one of power. And then Marilyn's got slides, and then there's one B slide as well.
Okay, so I guess we'll just run through that. Okay, super cool. All right. I guess I'll sit here. Okay. So yeah, I'm so excited to be moderating this panel today. My name is Kim Cobb. I'm a professor in Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, also the director of our Global Change Program, and College of Science Advanced professor. So gratitude for Beth for allowing me to squeeze in here, just coming from the Candida building, of course, talking about teaching in the building, which is super relevant to today's topic. And so I know nobody in this room needs really an introduction to climate change, but really rather you have a whole list of pressing questions you might like to ask our panelists. And so just to note that I think the ecosystem for technology in the space of climate resilience is really the issue of our time, really. And the core question is, how do we keep people safe? How do we grow our economy and transition it to the low carbon future that we know it needs to get to? And what role can technology play in shepherding that transition responsibly? So this is the purview of IPaT and many other entities on campus. And so I would love to go down. Are we going to go, is this the order, roughly, of slides? I didn't provide slides, so I don't know. Okay, so I guess I guess I'll have each of the panelists maybe introduce themselves first, and then we will go to slides, and we will go in order now. So Marilyn.
Marilyn Brown. I'm in the School of Public Policy, a Regents professor there, and I head the Climate and Energy Policy Lab.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jessica Rose. I'm the Associate Director for Analytics and Communications in our Facilities Unit, which is not on the educational and research side. We're over on the administration and finance side. But the team is new. We're very excited, and we're working really hard to make data available to the research and school.
You take that. They have one.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, what?
Hello.
Oh. Okay, maybe
Testing,
we do need that,
testing.
Marilyn.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm Jennifer Levy. I'm a principal academic professional in the College of Sciences, where I teach a lot of biology, and I'm also the director of the Urban Honeybee Project.
Good afternoon, Rich Simmons. I'm a senior research engineer at the Strategic Energy Institute. I direct the Energy Policy and Innovation Center, which is kind of a regional ecosystem approach to solving energy challenges. And I am a part-time instructor in mechanical engineering, have a courtesy in public policy.
Okay, great. And so I guess I'd like to start with some of the brief comments that I know, that you have each prepared. Stressing the word brief.
All right,
And I
well,
will be stepping aside to gesticulate wildly when we need to. Yes,
I
so
do, yeah.
you want to
Okay.
take
All
this,
right,
and
so-
hopefully if we click, there we
All
are.
right, so I'm going to talk about this very important and interesting project called Georgia Drawdown, which is aimed at trying to identify the most promising solutions to the climate challenge here in the state of Georgia, and is also engaged in a major communications and outreach stakeholder building effort, which is also important, which is why being here is a thrill. Want to start by also, though, explaining why it is so important to communicate. Just last Friday, the Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, in Davos, Switzerland, at a World Economic Forum, said that the cost and performance of technology, clean tech in particular, is improving so rapidly that we do not need any new policies to drive the marketplace in the United States. Our emissions will decline on their own. And then yesterday, Administrator of the Energy Information Administration, Linda Capuano, said in revealing the most recent prediction for CO2 emissions of the United States, that today, in the year 2020, we will emit approximately 5 billion tons of CO2, and in the year 2050, we will emit approximately 5 billion tons of CO2, just as we did in the year 1990, 5 billion tons. So clearly, communication is not occurring across agencies in Washington, and we don't want that to be the case here in Georgia. So we are trying to stimulate a conversation about what can be done, and how well it can be done, and how good it will be for us. We're starting with a project called the Project Drawdown, which was a global effort to identify solutions to climate change. We're taking their 100 solutions and asking which of those are most important and useful here in Georgia, putting a Georgia lens on that analysis. So we start with that puzzle there on the right of chess, 10 by 10, a grid of about 100 solutions that we were teed up for us by this global project, and we're putting it through a sieve. First, are they applicable to Georgia, like tropical rainforest? No, we can take that off easy. But then we've got to go through a fact-based drawdown process of identifying the best solutions to examine in more detail. So in phase 1, which ended about a month ago, we took the 100 and we arrived at 23 by answering the question, is the solution technology and market ready? Is there enough local experience and data to be able to implement it here in the great state of Georgia? Can the solution reduce 1 million tons of CO2 by the year 2030? Georgia is responsible for emitting about 100 million tons of CO2. Actually, it emits about 140 or so million, but then it sequesters maybe 30, 40 million, so 100. Nice round number. We're only dealing with solutions that will get you about 1% of that each, at least 1 million tons of CO2. That's our minimum, that's our bar. And then, is the solution cost competitive? Does it have a chance of making a difference in our state? So we're looking now that we have our short list and arriving at our short list, we attempted to visualize what these solutions might look like in Georgia. For instance, to get a 1 million ton reduction using parabolic trough concentrating solar power plants, you would need 4 of them. Or you might need 10 new solar power plants, each about 50 megawatts, biomass plants, or 24 new solar farms, or 216 new methane digesters, or maybe about 250,000 wind turbines, micro wind turbines, or maybe 300,000 in-stream hydro generators. How about 1.4 million households participating in a demand response program, or 7 million homes, about 70% of Georgia's households using solar water heating? Okay, so that gives us a sense of what 1 million tons is here in Georgia, and also challenges us to think, how aspirational are we going to be? This is not even the whole picture, though, because if you've got 1.4 million households participating in a demand response activity, well, every one of their 25 or 30 appliances is probably being managed. There are many more devices, a lot more IT going on than might be transparent.
I wrap up your thoughts here, Marilyn.
Okay. 23 solutions, 5 minutes, 5 slides. 23 solutions are located here. You can see divided by sectors of the economy. These are the ones we think have the best chance. We're ultimately, my last slide, going to produce a Georgia Drawdown Curve, which shows how much you can get in million tons of CO2 removed, for what cost, and at what benefit. We're going to take the technical potential of the 23 solutions, which are often vast, if you put a solar farm everywhere you can, for instance, and you look at the economic potential, the potential that will likely materialize regardless of any new policies, and then merge to this middle zone of what we might be able to do if reasonable policies were put in place and if barriers were removed and incentives were enhanced. So thank you. If you want to learn more, that's the last slide. I lied. Oh, there's the last.
Okay.
There was a slide, Georgia Drawdown. Google it, and you'll find out more.
Yes.
Do you want that?
Well, yes. Thank you, Marilyn. A very large, I should say, cross-campus initiative that also involves University of Georgia and Emory partners on that project. So really a part of a Georgia-wide coalition, Georgia Climate Project, which is aiming to provide solutions for Georgia in climate adaptation and mitigation. So
60% of the panelists are...
Yes, and Marilyn, Rich, and myself are some of the people who are involved in a core way. So I guess, do you have the clicker?
It's just one slide.
One slide. There you go. That is my kind of panelist.
Yeah. So no, I just wanted to provide a little.
Oh, here, maybe.
No, there we go. Okay, it's tricky. I just wanted a little backdrop for a little
great.
something to look at as we were going through this discussion. So I'm primarily an educator. So when I think about the intersections of people and technology and climate and resiliency, I love bees, and we have beehives on the roof of Clough, and they're great and all, but we put them there so that people could learn about pollinators and could learn about their importance in the environment, the importance for the evolution of plants in the face of changing climate, and we've done that in a number of ways. So the picture that you see behind me are a few students who participate in a VIP team called BeeSnap. So I'm a biologist. I work for the College of Sciences, and when we placed the bees on the roof of Clough, we were excited about interdisciplinary work among the students, but we thought it would be primarily, interdisciplinary within the sciences, looking at the chemistry of beeswax, or the genetics of bees, or the physics of flight, or honeybee optics. And it turned out that we had tons of students, engineers, computer scientists, public policy students who were interested in other aspects of bees. And not only students, but also a lot of staff across the Institute. So I'm so glad that Jessica is here, because we have worked a lot with facilities and capital planning and space management to make sure that programs that we institute on campus work well with the facilities that we have and the landscape that we have. So some of the projects, I brought like a sign-up sheet. I'm going to send around a sign-up sheet. So if anybody wants to reach out and talk about collaborations, I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that we were doing. One is we have a team of students who are embedding sensors into beehives. So this is what this picture is. It's called our hive scale team, and they have temperature sensors and weight sensors and stuff for the hives. So that's fun. And then we have another team of students. They're working on an app called Beekeeper Go. So everybody knows Pokemon Go, where you walk around looking for invisible, fake things, right? They're not really there. Well, this game, you're looking for actual bees on actual flowers, and when you find them, you're really excited, and then you can answer a series of questions. It's called a dichotomous key, which is aligned with the 5th grade learning standards and Georgia science standards, and then that's a data point for us. So we love the idea of collecting information having the public collect information for us and collect data points for us. And so Beekeeper Go is one way to gamify the collection of data by letting people earn coins and grow a little virtual garden and add beehives to their garden through an app.
Yeah.
So that's a couple of the things that we have going on. And I brought a sheet of all kinds of other wonderful citizen science projects that have neat technical interfaces, apps of different kinds that engage gardeners, students, members of the general public, hikers, et cetera, in the process of collecting data about living things.
Very cool. And I'm going to make a plug because you can learn how to have your own hive through Jennifer in her work. So I'm a failed gardener personally, so I aspire to change that. And so I think it's great. I don't think that's really my problem, but I think it's great that you offer classes for the entire Georgia Tech community, not just students, but anybody who wants to learn about how bees can be a part of the solution. It's just, I'm looking forward to that. All right, I think, are we back to you?
We're slide free.
Yeah, we're slide free. Okay, why don't we come back to you, Jessica?
Turn it off in the next little bit. Yep.
Hello.
Yep.
Yes, it is on. All right, I'm going to load that to you because I'm going to mess with it. So as I mentioned before, Jessica Rose, I'm in the facilities unit, and I think what I wanted to talk to folks about today is what it means to have analytics and communications in one group and what that means for the city of Georgia Tech. So this position is fairly new and different. There's not a lot of analytics in the built environment in higher ed right now on the administrative side. So I started in communications. I was a sustainability consultant for 7 years in the built environment, helping with strategy and decisions around how to be more environmentally friendly in physical space. So what started happening in facilities was engagement also fell under my purview. And what engagement meant was how students and researchers wanted to essentially use our built environment as a living learning laboratory. They had a lot of questions about the real world outcomes and subject matter expertise that was necessary for them to move into their applied research and maybe get applied research into the real world quicker. And then they also wanted our data. So for those of you who don't know, Georgia Tech is probably one of the most heavily censored and metered campuses in the country. We have probably 1.7 million data points that we're collecting at any given time, but it's a messy, messy endeavor, right? Because what I've learned is when you set data sensors and meters up to support operational outcomes, you're not always thinking about who else might have to look at that data. So we kind of transitioned to, okay, you're this communications person. Okay, now you're supporting all these engagements. Oh, now there's all this data. Who can help with the data? So we started this team called Analytics and Communications, and we just finished writing our vision statement, which is we believe that by increasing access to and the quality of information about our built environment, everyone will be better fiscal, environmental, better stewards of our fiscal, environmental, and physical assets. So the Institute is a small city. We host 30,000 people a day on the campus. Facilities management is essentially the public works. So we all know that as we think about resiliency and climate change, the cities are kind of where it's at, right? That's where the people are coming. That's where the meters and sensors are most highly established. So how do we use Georgia Tech as a truly living learning laboratory? What does that mean for the facilities team? Because we still have to operate the campus. And what does that mean for our applied researchers and our active learning opportunities? So that's probably why I'm at the table. Have a background in sustainability. We support anywhere between 3 and 10 engagement requests a month right now. And this is not written into my job description, just to be clear. I'm a communications person supporting analytics for our operations. So in addition to our operational support, we're supporting these requests right now. And when I was last tracking them, I'm not tracking them at the moment due to some leadership changes, we impacted about 570 individuals in a year. That's on par with how many staff members we have. So when you want to start talking about bringing people together, yeah, facilities management has 570 staff. So we are a very large group. And when you want to talk about bringing staff together, people together with outcomes, I believe there's an opportunity to engage our staff members. I come from a blue collar background. So my father was in the construction industry, a roofer and then a truck driver. my grandfather owned construction companies. And one of the things that I learned was people at the bottom don't always get heard. So when researchers are coming up with new ideas, applied research, how can we engage all of these facilities employees, or at least a group of them who may volunteer and want to do this, into bringing that subject matter expertise and that real world information closer so we can bring applied research to the forefront more quickly, right? I've read about it. The number one thing that gets it there more quickly is understanding the real world applications. So what Jennifer was talking about, her engaging our landscape team in integrated pest management practices really will make a difference on our pollinator friendliness of this campus, right? So she's meeting with them, she's talking with them, we're inviting them to our sustainability forum every year. So that's really where the magic rub is, I think, for facilities management in Georgia Tech. We work with Mr. Matt Sanders and Russ Clark pretty regularly. Right now with the Eco Commons that we're setting up, we are trying to figure out how to use the LoRaWAN network instead of having to use an outside third-party vendor to engage or to capture all of that data that could be available for all of you researchers and active learning opportunities. So right now, we don't have a plan for the data, right? We told the Board of Regents that we were going to collect a bunch of data and that we were going to tell them all about this performance landscape. But frankly, we did not develop a plan for how that data was going to get collected, how the researchers were going to access it, who was going to support the data. So now we're working really hard, thankfully, to members of IPaT to set up a network that can support these research outcomes while still enabling my team in analytics to provide those reports on basic performance metrics. So it's an exciting time. It's the city of Georgia Tech. I feel like I've been magically placed in this amazing world where people are always trying to do something better and solve the biggest problems. And I feel really lucky to be a part of it. That's it.
Great. Thank you. I'm a huge fan of facilities, right? We work together in the context of the Carbon Reduction Challenge, which we run, where students inundate your office with their crazy ideas. And data requests, right. Lots of data requests to make our campus more efficient from a carbon perspective. So I think there's a really bright future when we think about how students can come into the fusion and be part of that bridge to facilities, the rest of our campus. So thank you for being a partner with that. Rich.
Thank you. So I want to connect this idea of climate resilience to energy resilience. But first I have a quiz for the audience. Who's ever, or a question really, who's ever been in a car that ran out of gas? Raise your hand. Yeah? How about a car that ran out of electric charge? Anybody? Yeah? Flat tire? Anyone have a flat tire? And were you able to change the tire yourself? Those that, yep, good. So this is sort of, I'm an automotive engineer by background, spent 15 years in industry. And I think about how to make systems more resilient. And I'd like to also share a quote. I'm also a Purdue alum as well as a Georgia Tech alumnus. And it turns out there have been 12 men that walked on the moon. The first and the last are Purdue graduates, Neil Armstrong and Gene Cernan. And the two of them were on a Navy ship in 2011 doing tours and helping promote morale. And a Marine walked up to Neil Armstrong and said, I want to know, I heard this story. What did it feel like as you're cruising across the lunar surface with 15 seconds of fuel left and 100 feet yet to descend? And he said, son, what you need to know is everybody knows there's another gallon left in the tank. So that's one way to approach resilience, right? Leave yourself some cushion. In fact, I was camping with my wife in the late 90s, and I ran out of gas on the way back. And I'm like, oh boy, you know, we were engaged, thankfully. It was before, and we stayed engaged. We've been married 20 years now, so. I had a gallon of lantern fuel in the back, which is white gas. I didn't know a lot about hydrocarbons at the time, but you know what? It got us to the gas station. She's like, I'm not pushing. So there are different ways to think about resilience, but what we're doing here at Tech is being prepared, thinking about redundant systems, a diversity of solutions in terms of energy and the grid and reaction to hazardous weather events, And so we're funding some of these things, and we're doing it with an approach that is ecosystem-centric. So with the broad boundary of the economics, the people, the society, the laws, the regulations, as well as the great technology. And so we have some really, one of these is sort of related to some of the savanna activities. We're looking at Hurricane Michael and some other hazardous events that hit the southeast, which is particularly vulnerable to hurricanes and natural disasters. And how can we understand how outages can be made more, let's say reaction to outages can be made more resilient, and what is the social and impact on small business and communities. So there's a study for that. We're also recently funding some stuff on EVs and looking way in the future when they may have a higher penetration. How do you evacuate a large city when a good percentage of your people are driving electric vehicles, and by the way, the grid's down, right? So is that maybe even on the flip side of that a resource now to provide backup power where we otherwise would have had no ability to do that? We're looking at this burden and equity situation very closely. There's a big disparity in the way people can afford their energy based on their socioeconomic and income status. We're looking at material constraints. So battery chemistries right now are pretty locked into lithium ion based on costs and mass production capabilities, but we know there's some limiting materials like cobalt and rare earths, and we know the same could be true for silicon solar panels. So really thinking about how do we diversify the mix. I'll just conclude by saying when you drive a hybrid car, you have actually two power plants. You have the electric one and the gasoline one. And it's a beautiful marriage because you can operate them at their optimal point. And so that if it's not a condition that's suitable for an engine, for example, at high torque needs, but yet the motor would be, it's a good trade-off. So that's the kinds of approaches we're taking, not just for cars, but for the grid and for society approaches to integrate renewables in general. And then I think in general, we also realize we've got to make the affordability a major part of this, the equity side. And so when we develop backup plans, we don't just think what is the least cost to the greatest number, but also what about the bringing everyone along and making sure that resilient solutions don't just address the masses, but everybody included. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. So I think in the interest of time, we will open it up for some questions, which I'm sure you guys have for our esteemed panel. Wow, okay, just super Johnny on the spot. Yes?
Okay, so I've been watching Discovery and all the channels about the solar panels. So where are we from a technology standpoint as far as like ROI? Is there really an ROI, and do we have the battery technology to hold that power? I'm just kind of curious where you think we are from a solar technology standpoint.
Solar power is more affordable if done in large scale by utilities over, solar farms. But a rooftop is, second best in terms of the cost. I've got them, as does Kim, and I don't know if Rich has got them yet, but I figure about an 8-year return on investment, including the 30% investment tax credit that the federal government provided me last year. So without that, it would be maybe a decade or more. So really not terribly cost effective at the moment unless you value these non-monetary, non-market assets that include things like feeling pretty good about it and wanting to give it a try, right? But I have the wealth enough to do that. Not everybody can. So it can't go mainstream very easily until prices drop. They have dropped from $2 per watt to 0.2 cents per watt. It's really remarkable, but probably not quite enough. Storage is not there either. I've got it ordered. Right now I can't determine if the city of Atlanta needs to provide me with an additional permit to get it installed by Creative Solar, the preferred residential solar provider. So we're stuck in this Netherland of, I've submitted my request and it's on a few tape recorded messages, but the city's supposed to get back to me soon, so we'll see. But it's also very pricey, but it will be great to have. And if you want to learn more, I'd love to talk with you about how I plan to use my storage with my EVs and everything else.
Yeah, I want to, Rich, you held a forum on incentivizing rooftop solar at the county level with SCI.
Yeah, exactly. We did a 2-year study or a 1-year study with UGA and Emory and Georgia Tech to understand how to develop guidance for county commissioners deciding where to site solar, what the benefits are there some health impacts, and dispel a lot of myths, right? Because a lot of these communities don't have the data or the bandwidth to study, what is the decommissioning plan? Well, these things haven't even been installed in the field for 20 years. So, but we tried to do that, and it was a great activity. We heard a lot of erroneous ideas, and we tried to make sure that we provided data to dispel them. And it's true, like the trends are a dramatic piece of this in terms of affordability. Right now, it looks like the utility scale, meaning very large, more than a few acres, are very cost competitive. The community can also be that. The rooftop, it's not there yet, and I think that a couple of you have solar, and I think the goal there is you're trying to deal with more than one objective versus price. So you're really thinking about, can I stand alone as a residential need? And I think that we will approach more competitive solutions. But I think Georgia is now number 10 in the country in solar. We've put on the block another 2 gigawatts to add big percentage. We'll be approaching 3 or 4% of our generation from solar from 0 in 2010. And so it's a bit of a learning curve, but both the costs and the technology trends are favorable.
Yep.
Georgia has great solar radiation, by the way, as you know.
Yeah. I mean, a quick footnote that my mom lives in D.C. and her panels were fully paid for because the city has a 100% renewable mandate. And rather than go outside to pay a premium, they're basically installing her system and pulling the power and making that count for their grid. So it's there are a lot of different ways to get this done that are providing blueprints for more ambition from a policy perspective. I want to go to Beth here.
So we do a lot of work in interaction design to change people's behavior. So everything from texting teenagers around pediatric asthma to immersive virtual reality to train public response first responders. What are things that you've seen work? Because I think in many cases, whether it's convincing someone to make a major investment or it's a daily change of behavior, what are things that you think is working now or holds promise, and what are some grand challenges to put out to the rest of the IPaT community?
Jessica.
So one of the things that I'm researching right now, I'm, God willing, going to graduate with my master's degree in city and regional planning in May, is about valuing things like ecosystem services. And the key is, what are people's values? And how do you influence people's values? And so I think the old adage of leadership matters is really important when you're talking about groups. We are social creatures, and so we do think in groups. We do think about what's important to others or how we can influence one another, and our leadership sets the tone. And I don't mean, I'm not going all the way up to the top right now in the White House, but just in general, in the way that we interact and we think about groups of people and how to influence them, I think it's important to identify leaders. And those could be influential community leaders, those could be leaders of the largest organizations, but people value what they believe they're supposed to value to some extent, frankly. I mean, it's just true. And so we have to figure out that tone and that messaging that says, this community believes this is important, and therefore we are going to change policy to support the installation of solar panels that don't cost you a ton of money, or we are going to support, an opportunity for you to compost instead of throwing your biological material in the landfill. So I believe it goes back to that, and I really do think leadership matters more than people are giving it credit right now. We're all a little bit scared of what's happening with some leadership issues, but there are opportunities at different levels in society to figure out how to rally people from a leadership perspective. And that's what I've been seeing.
Marilyn, anybody else want to take a pass at that rich question? That was.
No, let Charlotte ask her question.
Go ahead. Yes.
I'm Charlotte, and I'm in the MCing program with Dr. Brown.
Okay.
And so my question was, UPS has an EV fleet, or at least a small one. And so I was curious if you're trying to look at more industries or companies to bring EV to scale for fleets, and also could it be a solution for equity for different communities to do sharing around EVs?
So that's a very prescient question. A lot of people think that the small passenger car is the only EV we're looking at, and I think that's a mistake, because you're exactly right. Think about, when was the last time you saw a UPS truck pull up and drive away? Were they like driving energy efficiently, right? They slam on their brakes and they goose it when they leave. And so that's actually a perfect scenario for the benefits of an EV, right? You can put all that energy into the battery and then you can draw it back. And so we're actually working with UPS on some research ideas. For them, it's got a pencil in terms of the economics, so that's also another nice thing, is there's this bookend of what would it look like with no subsidy support, you know? The other side of that, you talked about with the fleets maybe for serving underserved populations. So we actually had a EV conference a couple weeks ago, and we talked about a lot about the equity side. This can't just be a rich man's opportunity. It's got to be available and serve the needs. There's some neat programs where they're looking at kind of used Leaf vehicles and putting them into the Uber and Lyft fleets. So these folks, a lot of them don't own their vehicles. There was one model talked about by GM where they said, we're actually going to rent these EVs to people that don't have cars and let them, you know, earn money. So there's some really neat space in this area. Thank you for the question.
Becky?
Yeah, so sort of continuing the theme of like institutional players, Georgia Power, right? Georgia Power has a huge influence in the energy that we consume, and sort of a monopoly, right, and regulated as such by the state. You know, there are different models that Georgia Power could use. They're not very good about selling, like you put stuff back onto the grid. They don't give you an interesting price to do that if you can generate your own electricity. What's the sort of future for changing that conversation, trying to make, because without Georgia Power, it seems to me that some of the incentives can't change, and the electric companies hold kind of a crucial set of cards for making these systems more or less viable.
It's been 8 years regulating the largest public power provider in this country, TVA, and now down here, watching a lot of the same behavior here. Utilities are used to building and managing large power plants. They have got to turn their business on its head and be willing to look at ways to help you save electricity, to be paid to help you save electricity, to sell you services that are softer, you know. So they need to be able to help facilitate the development of new third-party businesses that are going to emerge, such as those that might help manage where the EVs get charged and whether or not they can be used to put electricity back into the grid when the electric utility company is reaching a summer peak and they need to shed load. So wouldn't they love to have a fleet of EVs in their parking lot right at that time? There's an opportunity for new businesses, and I do think that there's some Georgia Tech student groups that are trying to identify how to do that, you know, digital apps to help and create a value out of the management of all of these devices. I hope that Georgia Power will buy into this using some of their own equity and take a stake and help make it happen. If they don't help, you know, it's going to happen anyway, and they're just going to lose out, right? We need a Elon Musk or something like that in the Georgia Power board.
I have something to add to that.
Sure. Sign me up.
Am I still here? I have something to add to that. I was actually pleasantly surprised over the last year of some of the things I was learning. So one of my
responsibilities in the facilities management unit is I oversee the purchasing of all of our utilities on campus, which ranges between 21 million to 28 million, depending on how you slice and dice the number. Yes, it's a very big number. And so I spend a lot of time at customer information meetings. There was a big thing with the Public Service Commission this year on rate increases. And I learned two interesting things. The first one was that Georgia Power has recognized, well, not just Georgia Power, Southern Company, that they have a huge asset at hand when it's related to the Internet of Things. All of the power poles that already have electricity going to them throughout our infrastructure, right? They've recognized a business opportunity that can take them beyond just delivering energy. And this is a huge opportunity for them of what do they do with these poles? How do they provide access? They're doing everything from giving people security access in neighborhoods so they can see what's happening in their neighborhood. They're exploring all kinds of ideas. So that gave me a little bit of hope. I'm thinking of alternative business models. Another thing that's given me hope is we actually just got an MOU signed between Georgia Tech, both on the A&F side and the research side, with Southern Company and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And the project, we're calling it GT Flex. This is a project where we're going to be looking at 12 buildings on campus to understand both load shedding and kind of preheating and pre-cooling, so we can figure out grid flexibility. So what we've realized, and the Department of Energy is literally handing NREL $500,000, which I know isn't a ton of money, but this isn't a grant, it's just please figure this out for us. So we've engaged Rocky Mountain Institute and NREL and others to say, what data can we provide, real data, to show what's really happening when you change the information going to and from the building. This is more than just general load shedding. You know, we've been doing a little bit of load shedding with RTP pricing for years. This is really taking it to the next level. This is saying we know we're going to peak at 4:30. Let's pre-cool these buildings at noon and keep them cool and see what we can learn. What impact is that having on the building's infrastructure, hardware, software, communication protocols, and then what's working and what is not working on older buildings, let's say, versus newer buildings with different types of insulation, because that's going to be important to really understand load flexibility and grid flexibility at a large scale. And it's very hard for these large generation groups to get the data. So that's another opportunity that Georgia Tech's bringing forward, because we are the city of Georgia Tech, and we have a large number of types of buildings, right? So we have our student housing, we have all kinds of different things. So they're really excited to learn. So I'm excited to know that Southern Company was the first to raise their hand and want to do this, and we're hoping there'll be some financial incentives for Georgia Tech at the end of the day too, if we can make it work. So I'm a little more hopeful than I was before. I think they're realizing they have to do it. They have to. And so now they're trying to figure out what does that really mean for them.
Can I add a little something to that? So I think one opportunity that the power companies have is their distribution networks, and how those networks, i.e. the right-of-ways under the power lines, can be used for conservation. So there have been a lot of initiatives to have those rights-of-ways be wildlife corridors, to plant them as prairie, to provide pollinator forage, and even to place honeybee hives under those power lines. And one of the things that's on the handout, if you managed to pick up a handout, is a really interesting program that's run by a company called Broodminder. They create these sensors for beehives, and they have a website called Bee Counted that collects all the information about the weights of hives, which is completely correlated to climate, right? So a honeybee hive gets heavier when flowers are blooming, and and when flowers bloom depends on the climate. And so the weight of a beehive can be a proxy for climate, and with enough networked hives, you can get some pretty interesting information. So just throw that in there as a
awesome. I love it. I don't know if we want to wrap it up.
Fast.
Okay, right there, fast.
Policy question. Paul Baker, School of Public Policy, Center for Advanced Communications Policy. I have not thought about the issue. We do a lot of work with emergency communications and emergency response, particularly for people with disabilities. But when you mentioned the issue of what you do when you're evacuating, and half your very smart, you have these cities full of cars that very short time. The movement, the turnover of vehicles is much quicker. If you've got slow, I don't know what they're called, the second stage charging that takes like an hour. I'm trying to figure, has anyone thought about how you plan for that? I'm serious. I had not realized, I had not thought about it, but it becomes, particularly in a progressive area, California. I'm thinking a situation where you've got an earthquake and all these, people.
Hey, Frank, you've done a lot on disasters research, and you could probably speak to that. I mean, we have an expert on this subject right here.
Yeah, it's a very good.
Maybe never put the two together.
It's a very good point. It's 100, 120 on the best pre.
Can you put the mic a little closer, just so we can hear, or is it on, or?
Is it on?
Yeah, just hold it close.
I mean, a Leaf is at, what, 100, 120 right now. But in the next few years, there'll be 200, 250 EVs regularly. Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying, if everybody had if we had a lot of EVs now, it would be a really big problem.
We've already planned this.
If by the time we get a lot of EVs, it won't be, because we'll be doing 200, 250, 300 mile ranges.
We bike every day.
That's assuming they're all charged up, right? And so if your only car you own is an EV, you got a problem.
Okay, I guess this is lovely discussion. You gentlemen can continue afterwards, but I wanted to close just by remarking that this is one family on this campus, and there are overlapping families represented here as well. And part of climate resilience is building community. And for me, that's what we're doing here, and that's what we try to do every day at Georgia Tech. And we have a real opportunity to build that stronger and to aim those community goals towards more specific things that could help us as a campus, as a community, advance climate resilience, not just for our campus, but for the entire region as well. So I wanted to kind of end with a little bit of a call to arms on this issue. There are ways that we all have to engage individually, but to recognize that we are part of this amazing institution called Georgia Tech with immense capacity. When we come to alignment, I don't think there's anything we can't achieve on this issue. So thank you, Beth, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Them back for a brown bag?
Yes. You want more. That's a good sign.
They're fun.
You don't need that anymore.
You can keep it. All right, so we got a couple things left to do, and we have definitely heard the request to get this group back for some other think tanks and some more ways that we can engage this community discussion. I was really excited when this topic was suggested in our town hall planning, because this was just a fantastic way to bring these new communities together, and I think we've just started that conversation. So I don't know what's going on over there. All right, food. Oh yeah, yes, I'm talking and food is appearing. Sean, do I get my slides back? All right, so while the slides are coming back, we're closing our town hall with one of our favorite traditions, which is to recognize members of our community with the IPaT Star Award. This is an award that we give out with some regularity about twice a year. And we've, for those of you who are at the holiday party, yes, you already know the answers, but like this is the official Oscars where we formally recognize these winners. But I've lost my clicker, so, okay. And the IPaT Star Award is given to staff, faculty, student teams that really represent, the best of IPaT's values, our mission, and that mission is part of Georgia Tech. It is actually the favorite part of my job, so the only people who can't get the Star Award are Lee and myself, because we get to vet all of the nominations, but that means we get to read these tremendous nominations coming in from across campus about why these individuals should be recognized as such valued members of our community. So I have 3 IPaT Star Awards, and then after that we get to celebrate them and celebrate our community with food and beverages. So first, I didn't know this order. Okay, so first is, you've heard me bragging about the team because I use the entire platforms and services to highlight this work. I didn't do this one. Scott, would you like to come and stand right here? All right, I need the entire team. Can the entire team please come up and be recognized? Seriously, Kim, Roz, Scott. Hey, you're lucky. You could have been Susan Sarandon. We do this as well. Again, just recognizing a project team that started from, a great idea, pitching, being part of the Georgia Smart Communities program, doing that hard work both from the innovation, the community outreach, the STEM engagement, double, triple word score from IPaT Parlance in terms of the things that they're pulling together. And just as I said, I got to red team one of their proposals going out last fall, just continuing to bring in more and more members of a larger community and growing the ambitions of the things that they want to achieve. So kudos to them. Scott, we will change your profile pic on your buzz card. Yeah, there we go. So congratulations. I think we now have a new tradition for the Star Award as well. And noting that both Matt and Peter are refusing to stand up, but they're also in the room. All right. Sean, I'm going to get it right. I practice. Intaziduden. Sean, please come up here. I practiced for an hour. If a name has more than 3 syllables, I'm just tanked. So I'm getting better. So Sean, you've been at IPaT now how long? Because it feels like just 2 years, but just amazing in terms of the contributions to the system support, the IT support that we're doing, everything from this is running seamlessly to, and he wasn't in charge of pictures, to the capture that we're doing, to the major heavy lifting around our protected health data infrastructure, the 24/7 support when that data infrastructure goes down, because sometimes air conditioning and all these things get exciting, to just the can-do attitude that greets each of us every single day. And I think for all of you who have ever done IT support or have been that crazy person in the IT support person's office, they don't always see our best side. But just kind of the grace and generosity with how he supports our community is tremendous. So thank you very much, Sean. That's enough. Just terrific. Keep smiling, keep smiling. All right, and then one more word, Raul Perez. All right, who's been hiding behind the camera. So you've experienced Raul's work in anything that you've seen our work that we do, that amazing, the thing we have for the inaugural sports work, our impact report, our website, everything in terms of the look and feel of what we do. What you probably don't know is not only does he make us look good, but the secret's out about his skills. So many other groups on campus are, clamoring to work with him. And they're even taking things like here's the IPaT Impact Report. Take that model and then replicate it to other groups on campus. and then it's gone, he's now gone national. And some of the work that we're doing with major policy, national committees, it's like, they're like, do you know anybody who does graphic design? I'm like, have I got someone for you? So he's now working on a major report that will be out and have a decade plus shelf life in terms of conveying the impact of the computing community as a whole in terms of the research that we do. So just tremendous talent and generosity and patience. Lots of patience, because I'm in his office, I'm like, well, I need something that does this, but this and this. Hey, Beth, I've got this. Just thank you very much for everything you do. Those of you who've been aware, there's this whole reorg going on with marketing and communications on campus. The good news is he is part of all of that. The bad news is that then now even more people are going to be clamoring. So it just means we have to be more organized and get our requests out there. But fantastic work. Thank you so much. Have I embarrassed everyone thoroughly? So thank you for coming to the town hall. This is a great way to start the semester. Please stay, meet new people, exchange ideas. Faith, get the panelists to sign up for think tank sessions, and just have a terrific semester. And how do you reach us? IPaT@goodtech.edu. I want us to be flooded with new requests and new ideas. Thank you very much.